7 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. We acknowledge we are gathered on the Treaty 1 and Treaty 2 territories, and that Manitoba is located on the treaty territories and ancestral land of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabeg, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota Accra, Daniel-Sialea, Ojibwe, Nicotucket. We acknowledge Manitoba is located on the homeland of the Red River Métis. We respect the spirit of intent of treaties and treaty making. We remain committed to working in partnership with the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. Okay.
Be resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council October 17, 2023, special meeting of council October 26, 2023, special meeting of council November 3rd, 2023, and special meeting of council November 14th, 2023 be adopted or be approved as circulated and posted.
Can I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Councilor Brown, anybody got any questions? No? I'll call for the question. All in favor? Carried. Okay, adoption of the agenda.
Be it resolved that the agenda be adopted with the additions of an RF now request, subdivision 4116-238569, subdivision extension, engineer's recommendation. Check amounts and accounts payable, November 2nd, labor disruption reports, November 12th, labor disruption reports, part-time casual employee, waste transfer station job advertisement, accounts payable check register, and the transportation committee recommendation.
Can I have a second? Councilor Rohan seconded. Anybody got any questions?
That's all.
Just clarification, so the transportation committee, yeah, good, okay, I thought of it should be sent, yeah. Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll call for the question, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Okay, we're on number 3. Just waiting for a motion. Okay, number 3 is a little bit, there's a whole bunch of them clumped together, but they'll come later. They should have been moved down. So we'll go to number 4, reception of public hearings and delegations. Okay, number 4.1.
Whereas the Arm of Cornwall has received the revised subdivision application map for subdivisions 4116-21-8301 to revise the proposed public road as shown on the new subdivision application map.
Okay. So,
Are you second?
yeah, second. Anybody any question? Call for the question. All in favor? Okay, now we need a motion to go to public hearing.
Be it resolved that the council of the Arm of Cornwallis hereby adjourn the regular meeting of council to enter the public hearing on subdivision 4116-21-8319 at 7:04 p.m.
Can I have a second?
Sorry.
Okay, anybody get any questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, we're in public hearing, so I'll just read the requirements for the public hearing. Excuse me. Okay. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive representation from the applicant and from persons who wish to make them concerning. We will first hear from the applicant and then from and then those present who wish to make representations, starting with anyone who wants to speak in favor of the proposal. At the end of the presentations, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond. If and when the response the applicant supplies new information or raises new issues, then the others will be given an opportunity to speak again. At the end of each presentation, the members of council may ask or for clarification from the speaker on any fact or issue, but will not enter into any debate. Person speaking must address the chair. If they have any questions that they think the applicant should answer, they should raise them in their presentation to the chair. The applicant will have an opportunity to respond to questions when the other presentations are finished. Excuse me. This is also not the time to ask questions to members of council. Under the Planning Act, the purpose of the public hearing is for council to receive representations, and a discussion or argument involving members of council is inappropriate. Okay, so first of all, we'll hear from the applicant. Can the applicant come up? Good evening, folks. If you don't mind, you can state your name and we'll record it.
Al Puhatch.
Al Puhatch, okay, and
Scott Bromley.
yep, Scott Bromley. That's the applicant. Okay, go ahead, gentlemen.
So what we're doing here is just revising we're submitting this plan again from the previous. We revised it basically just to put a connector road in to show at the end of the property. The last phase we put in, we didn't know that. And this phase now we have shown it. And it's a two-phase thing where we're doing 15 parcels to begin with. And then the second phase will be, as you see, phase 2 marked on the map there. And then the road and Joding Road will also, where it's dotted in there, will be the final phase, and that'll be finished off with the final phase, the road network. And
Got anything to add there, Scott?
No, that's essentially what we're doing.
Does council have any questions for the applicant? Clarification?
Is the plan to build the public roads in the entire phase 1 and phase 2 during phase 1?
No, just what you see here would be for phase 1.
But you've got a public road that goes all the way to the back of phase 2?
Yes, that's the connector to the property to the south.
as part of that Highways Act, they wanted some additional connector roads in. So, and then the property, that's why you see that road on the other side of that property there is
Is there a way we can bring the map up for the public to see?
Do you guys want a copy? Is that easy?
Oh, we've got it on our computer, but I was just wondering for the public to, if there's a possibility.
to the west of us. So they've come in with us and also would like to, so
Would they tie in due west of that public road then? Is that where they would do it?
west. Yes, right due west of
Yeah.
it, yeah, exactly. And then in your subdevelopment agreement, you still have more to the north, because that's still kind of like behind the highways too, that's Dorothy Rayner's place and also Campbell's place back in there. That's still on your subdivision map, that it could be subdividable. So this road actually then on his place could actually extend to the north there too. And then that could provide another connector road for that. Because most of that is all landlocked because of Gray Road can't go straight through.
Yeah.
Unless it ever does go straight through, well, then it could be, but everything else is, highways won't allow any roads going out to the highway, so then we're providing network that we could all interconnect there basically on the road.
So just to confirm what Councilor Ross just asked, So in phase one, all the roads will be completed. That's your intent to go
Everything.
right to,
Yes, I should have done that.
I just want to make sure we're on,
So here,
yeah,
all the way around.
right to the, okay,
We provided the first access and the secondary access. So according to your plan,
Yeah,
every
secondary.
subdivision must have two secondary accesses, our secondary access, so we provided the two secondary accesses, and then we provided a connector road.
right on. Does council members have another question? Okay, if there's nobody else, thanks a lot, gentlemen. Good presentation. Is there anybody else in the audience that wants to speak in favor of the application? Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak in opposition of the application or have a question? Come on, come on. Yep, come over here, state your name and,
Hi, I'm Shelley Cokerts. I'm the people that just live to the south. So I'm not in opposition to the development.
Okay.
I just want to, for clarification, the public road that goes to the west and then shoots down to the south there. Just for clarification, it's penciled in there, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly that it's going to be built within phase one. Is that correct? Or is it,
Yeah, they just clarified.
yeah, just clarify.
I didn't hear, sorry.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry.
That's what we
Yeah, that's what
discussed.
said, it's gonna be built in the first stage.
I'm in opposition to that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Shelley? Is there anybody else in the audience that wants to speak against, or clarification or speak against the application? Okay, I'll ask you after one more. You have got anything to add? You'll be getting a second chance. Okay, last chance for anybody in the audience to, oh,
Sorry,
come on in, Joe.
I just want something. Is there a timeline that gets linked to phase one?
I think the rural planning board has, isn't it 3 to 5 years or something like that, or is it 3 years? I can't remember. So there's a time limit that you have to, that this application would then expire, I believe.
It's 2 years from the
Yep.
date of the conditional approval, plus you can get an extension for 1 year.
Devin, can you stand up? That's the planning director here in
I'm
Brandon,
just
so he's,
clarifying that after conditional approval is given, there's 2 years
Yep.
to complete the application, plus you can apply for 1 year extension.
okay. So there you go.
So just a question then, have you received the planning report? I'm just wondering why, I couldn't find it public, like the planning report, I'm not seeing it publicly,
When you say planning report, are you talking the second report or the planning report?
the planning report, like, should
I-
it not be made public?
I do not, we did not get a planning report on this application. Like Mr.
Sorry, Megan.
Yeah.
There was a planning report for the previous iteration of this subdivision. We didn't provide any planning report because there weren't any provincial concerns. And the addition of this road doesn't have any provincial concerns. So there is an existing planning report, and I can share that with you if you like, because it has hit council's table, but it would have been a previous.
Okay, so that includes, wetland drainage and so on, like all that information will be on that report?
Yep.
Is it not normally public?
And because it's a public hearing, in this document, that was,
The public report itself, should it not be posted publicly?
I would have expected to be, but because it's a public hearing, we're not, according to this, we're not allowed to, or it's not recommended.
It's the last report from the
Yeah.
last hearing.
Yeah,
It-
it's
It's
public.
online.
It's on public.
It hasn't changed since the last hearing.
And your question though, Shelley, I was surprised. It's too bad it wasn't attached, but it wasn't, so. And I trusted, yeah, it is
Okay.
attached at the
All right.
previous.
I just wasn't sure if any of that would change, given that there's another, I just want to make sure that's all.
Nothing was changed, Shelley, in that at all.
The planning director just confirmed that it's the same one, so.
Alright.
Just so everybody, I mean, we still have to enter into a development agreement. That's where the wetlands and the drainage and all that will be all agreed upon,
Okay.
negotiated, yeah.
All
Okay.
right, thank you.
So is there anybody else? If there's nobody else, I'll ask for a motion to close the hearing.
Be it resolved that the council of the Island of Cornwallis hereby adjourn the public hearing at 7:15 PM and resume their regular meeting of council.
A second.
Councillor Ross seconds it. Anybody got any question? All in favor? Carried. No. I mean, there is a resolution in front
Whereas the
of us.
landowners and applicants, Myria Designs and Keller Developments / Alvin Pruhatch and Deborah White, property legally described as southeast quarter 321019 West Primary Lane, roll number 83300, rural municipality of Cornwallis, has submitted a revision of their subdivision application map to revise the public road within the subdivision. Therefore be it resolved that my battery is running low. Therefore be it resolved that after careful consideration of the new proposed public road change and any representations made for or against the revised plan sought by the applicant, the Council of the Island of Cornwallis, the meeting duly assembled on the 21st of November, 2023, approves the said SAM revisions.
A second.
Okay, second. Okay, we got a seconder now. Got anybody have any questions or concerns? Okay, now, I'll just make a comment here. Like I said before, we've got a development agreement that we will negotiate with the applicants to make sure there's any concerns that will be addressed. So that's just a comment. Yep. I'll call for the question. All in favor? Carried. Good. Okay, now, 4.2, right? Just want to make sure. No, do we have to go in public hearing again? Yeah, I'll need a motion to go to public hearing.
Be it resolved, the,
Sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Reed, so, we will need a new resolution approving the subdivision. We've now completed the public hearing, and we've approved that. It can be very similar to your previous resolution, which I don't remember exactly what it had, but basically it just needs to have a new date. So you've now approved the new road
Okay,
design. We do need a new resolution dated and then sent to our office to complete the subdivision.
okay, it wasn't part of the, okay, before we move on, how does council feel? We've passed the one resolution.
I would say deal with it.
What's that?
I would say deal with it.
Deal with it now? Okay, I'll leave that up on council decision. So,
We have to change the date.
well, the planning director is recommending that we need a resolution to approve the subdivision, which would include that. So we don't have a resolution in front of us.
With a new date on it.
Yeah, with a new date. Yeah.
That's
No,
fine.
I'll-
You can put it off until you're
Uh,
ready to make
Put
it.
it up, let's do it.
I'll just ask a question to the applicants. Are you guys in a rush for this? Is it something that you are
That would be good.
tonight? You'd like it?
Do we need to add it to the agenda, Mr. Chair?
Well, we've already approved our agenda and the resolution wasn't in front of us. We didn't realize that this has to be approved. We approved the public road system. I'm willing to work with council to to move this along. This is 2 years almost to the day where this
Mr.
first,
Chairperson, I'm gonna suggest
Yeah.
that we call a special meeting on Thursday.
would that be adequate to the applicant on Thursday if we get a resolution?
Yeah.
With 2 days start here?
Yeah.
We'll call a special meeting for, I'm gonna try for 4 o'clock or something. Or
Well, it's only
4:30.
48 hours, so.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Terry. Yeah, it has to be 7:30. Yeah, we have to provide 48 hours notice as per our procedure bylaw.
Is there no way of changing the agenda? now?
What's that?
There's no way of changing the agenda?
No, we approved the agenda. Yeah, we're trying to
Yeah. no, I-
stay to our procedure bylaw. The applicant has already said they can wait 48 hours. We'll deal with it on Thursday night. Yep, thanks, folks. Yep. Okay, so that way. So now, we're going into the board of revision, so I will need a motion to go into another public hearing.
Be it resolved that the regular meeting of council be adjourned at 7:21 PM to allow for the 2024 Board of Revisions.
I'll have a second. Councilor Grohan? Anybody got any question? All in favor? Okay, as the chairperson, I am declaring the board, the panel, open to hear the application against the property assessments. Can I call on the secretary of the board? So, and the assessor will be sworn in. Just give it a minute. Sabrina's just typing. So. I'm Russ, Sabrina.
Sworn in there. Thank you. You want someone to swear in or me? Okay. These are now we
I, Brenda O'Brien, do solemnly and sincerely affirm that the contents of this affidavit made and subscribed by me are true.
So,
I, Ashley Wilkinson, do solemnly and sincerely affirm that the contents of this affidavit made and subscribed by me are true.
Thanks, ladies. Okay, now I'll have the secretary read the first application.
sorry, what?
Yep, the procedure called, the secretary will read the first application. Okay, you need to read it. It's on you.
What's that? I don't know where the part is that needs to read.
I can read it. You want me to read it?
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
I'll just wait. Yeah. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll get you folks to introduce yourself as the,
Do you want the appellant up here at the same time?
The what?
With the appellant up here with us?
absolutely.
Okay.
We're a team here.
Okay.
Gotta work together.
I apologize, I wasn't sure on where we're going with this.
Yeah, well,
Did you want my evidence as well? Or did you want to?
not right now. The first thing we'll do is we'll introduce from my right to left, the people that are in front of us, so council, and we'll now read the applicant. So you guys go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, Brenda O'Grayson with Property Assessment.
I'm Ashley Wilkinson. I'm also with Property Assessment.
Wesley Van Bruggen with M&P LLP.
Okay? Okay,
Wesley needs to be sworn in.
Yes, he does.
Yes.
I wasn't sure, okay?
Just a minute still.
So,
All affirmative. I, Wesley Van Bruggen, do solemnly and sincerely affirm that the contents of this affidavit made and subscribed by me are true.
Okay. So now I'll just read the applicant. It's normally the secondary's job, but you just delegated myself. So the property assessment services, Garden of Cornwallis, road number 64100. And today's November the 21st, 2023. The applicant, the owner is J&G Homes Arena, Wesley Van Bruggen. And the property, subject property is at 111038 Road 55 North. It's 60 of the property, and last physical inspection was September the 8th, 2022. So,
Did you want us to present?
absolutely. Now
Yeah.
I'll hand it, that's the order of,
Oh,
the
okay.
secretary was supposed to be the applicant, so now I'll hand it over to you folks.
All right, so in front of you is our brief. The first thing on the first page, the information request history. We have asked multiple times for the cost information for this property, and it has not been supplied, so we just made note of that there. The current assessed value on this property, the land is $192,900. The building is $4,706,900 for a total assessed value of $4,899,800. The recommendation that we will be going forward with would be to allow a class and liability split on the property, which would see the taxable portion change to a land assessed value of $183,300, a building assessed value of $4,471,600 for a total taxable portioning of, or taxable assessed value of $4,654,900. And the exempt portion for the school portion of the property, the land value, we would recommend $9,600. Building, $235,300 for a total of $244,900. On page 2 and 3, it is just pictures of the subject property. Page 4 has a sketch of the main floor, as well as a sketch of the mezzanine. Page 5 is the location of the subject property, where the big yellow arrow is, and just in relation to proximity to the highway, to the city, and that. Page 6, the property summary, the legal description is 1-70227, zoned Ag 80, which is agricultural general zone. The lot size is 21.34 acres. Frontage is approximately 1,930 feet. The building description is a modern arena. The gross area of the building is 36,271 square feet. We have the sales history. The most recent transaction was September 2nd of 2021. It was a $1 sale as the property was changing from one corporation to another, but still the same owner essentially. And it was a land only sale. On page 36 of our brief, it shows that when the transfer of land was conducted, if you look at number 16 on page 36, it shows that the transferee valued the fair market value of all the land as $1,250,000. So even though it went through land titles as a $1 sale, they valued it as 1.25 million at that time, and that was September of 2021. Appeal history is today's pending appeal. The effective age of the building is 2021, so it was just built. Modern arena, square footage. So for the valuation summary on page 7, in arriving at the April 1st, 2021 valuation for the subject property, Property Assessment Services considered the cost approach to value. This approach is usually applied to larger special use properties that do not typically sell in the marketplace. Arenas don't typically sell in the marketplace, so that's why we felt the cost approach was the best approach to use. So in determining value based on the cost approach, we first determined the land value, the replacement cost new of the building, and then applied any depreciation. So the land value is currently $192,900. It's, as I said earlier, 21.34 acres, which works out to $9,039 per acre. We have 3 sales listed that are within the RM of Cornwallis. And the sales price and sizes for each of those are listed with the price per acre of each of those sales. Sale 1, the price per acre was $5,978. Sale 2 was $42,493. And sale 3, the price per acre was $15,251. So the comparable land sales above, we feel support the April 1st, 2021 land assessed value of $192,900. Then on page 8, replacement cost new for the buildings. The improvements are costed using the unit in place method based on rates contained in the ICI valuation manual, which is prepared by the provincial municipal assessor. The rates used in developing the replacement cost new for the subject property are based on the specific characteristics of the subject property. So for the arena, the replacement cost new is $4,995,905. And on page 16, if you flip to that, there is a breakdown of everything that went into the valuation of the property, from foundation, floor system, wall systems, everything that we added in order to come up with the replacement cost new of the property. For depreciation, physical depreciation, the property is brand new, so there is no physical depreciation for the building. Let's see here. Physical depreciation is calculated for the building based on a 50-year life table. The fencing and paving is depreciated at 35% and 50% prior depreciation. These are standard tables used in valuing these types of property. And prior depreciation is the standard method for items such as fencing, lighting, and paving. Functional depreciation would be depreciation due to a loss in the value due to lack of utility or desirability, which this building does not suffer from any form of functional depreciation or obsolescence. And economic obsolescence would be loss in value due to causes external to the property. And this building, again, does not suffer from any economic obsolescence or depreciation. On page 9, the cost approach to value. So we show the replacement cost new for each of the structures that are on the property. So for the modern arena, the replacement cost new would be $4,353,746. The Sinden, which is the patio bar, essentially, replacement cost new is $41,831. The depreciation on that is 50% just due to the type of structure that it is. It's it was built using CCANs. So those are automatically depreciated 50% right off the top. So the assessed value, or sorry, the replacement cost new for that structure would be 20,916. Storage building is replacement cost new of 48,078. The paving, sidewalks, courts, the track, bollards, replacement cost new, it was 498,466 with a 50% depreciation. That's part of the prior depreciation that I talked about in the physical depreciation. And then the fencing and paving, it was replacement cost new of 53,784 with a 35% depreciation. Oh, sorry, fencing and lights, yeah. So the replacement or the depreciated building value there was 34,960. So total building value then is 4,706,932. And the land value of 192,900 gives us a total value using the cost approach of 4,899,832, which our system then rounds to 4,899,800. We do acknowledge that there are 2 classrooms on the property that are used exclusively by the Western Canadian Hockey Academy. Based on the square footage of the classrooms as noted on the plans, Property Assessment Services would recommend a 5% class liability split for this property. And this split would recognize the land and building that's used for educational purposes as defined in section 22(1)D of the Municipal Assessment Act. If you flip back to page 4, the classrooms are on the mezzanine. If you look at the top of the sketch of the mezzanine, you can see the 2 classrooms there. So that is the only portion that is exclusively used by the school. So that's the portion that we would recommend having that exemption. So then on page 10, in arriving at the April 1st, 2021 valuation for the subject property, Property Assessment Services considered the cost approach to value. The final approach chosen for the valuation of any property depends on the nature and characteristics of the property. For the subject property, the cost approach is the approach most widely used for a property that seldom trades in the marketplace. Therefore, the recommendation is that the board confirm the assessed value of 4,899,800 and adjust the class and liability as shown in the table below, with the split that I had mentioned earlier, which would be the land at 183,300, building at 4,471,600 for a total taxable assessed value of 4,654,900. And then for the institutional exempt, the land, we would recommend the value be 9,600, with the building for that being 235,300 for a total of 244,900. On page 11, it's just the table of contents for the addenda that we have. Page 12 and 13 is the appeal letter that was submitted by the appellant. Page 14 and 15 are excerpts from the Manitoba Municipal Act, that the legislation that relates to when an exemption can be allowed, the one where we're suggesting the 5% for school would be the 22(1)D, because a portion of the property is used for an independent school. And then on page 15, there's the legislation that allows us to ask for the cost of construction on a property, which, as I mentioned earlier, we never did receive that value from the owner or the appellant. Page 15, 16, or sorry, not 15, pages 16, 17, and 18 is our breakdown of the unit in place costing, how we determined the value that we did. And then starting on page 19 is the development agreement that the owner entered into with the RM of Cornwallis back in April of 2021. And then we have on page 25, we have the ice rental lease agreement between the owner and Hockey Brandon. Pages 28 and 29 are the liquor licenses for the property. Page 30 is the transfer of land document in its entirety, and that's where on page 36, they provided by the transferee stated that the fair market value of just the land was 1.25 million. And then page 42 is the status of title, which documents all registered documents that affect the property, such as the development plan, utility easements, and mortgage. I believe that's it for us.
Anyone on council have a question for the assessors? I've just got one
Absolutely.
very well written report, and we haven't seen this until tonight. Question I got, when it comes into the development agreement,
Yes.
like again, I just took a brief look at it. There was an agreement that I believe was between the RM of Cornwallis and the applicant. There's city water that actually is at that property. Is
You know
that
what?
part of the application?
We did not find that agreement when we were
I'm-
looking for
I'm-
prior agreements.
Maybe, I'll maybe backtrack. Maybe it was between the city and
Okay.
Cornwallis. There was an agreement because they came back after the building
Okay.
was in construction. Yeah, and that's not part of the submission. Yeah, no, it's just a question I had. No, that's it. If anybody else has any question, and now.
Sorry, just a couple quick questions, on my side, if you don't mind.
Yep, absolutely.
And sorry, should I refer to you as Mr. Reed, Mr.
No.
Chair, how?
The board.
The board? Okay,
The board.
sounds good. So just for my own clarification, and just because I can't read the numbers, I apologize. If we could turn to page 4. So for the areas of the classroom, I've got what I think I make out is 114 feet in length.
That would include the dry land, so the classrooms actually aren't the whole 114. It is, the total square footage of the 2 classrooms is 1,464 square feet. I believe it's 50.
It's too fine of a print for me to read.
Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't get it much bigger than that when I was trying. I believe the classroom space is 50 by 24 or thereabouts.
Okay. Okay, all right. Just want to get clarification.
Yeah.
The other question is, was any consideration, my understanding is that you have ice time as well for the academy. Was any consideration given to the ice time?
No, because the school, the core subjects are taught in the classroom. They're not teaching the core subjects on the ice. So that was not considered. It was just the classrooms that were considered for the exemption.
Okay. Okay. I think those conclude my and then I guess, yeah, no, like, those conclude my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions from? Does council have any questions from the applicant then? Okay.
All right, now is everyone okay if I hand out, I've got submissions as well? Perfect.
Absolutely.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, give us two more, one's for Marlene here.
There you go. All right, here, I can bring a couple around this side here.
Marlene and secretary should get one. Good, thank you.
What, do we need one more as well?
No, I think
Everyone got?
Did you need one as well?
Sure.
Yep, all right.
we'll do that.
There you go. No problem. All right. Thank you. If we can turn to page 3 of the submission, we'll get started. So there's two issues, two kind of major issues that are under appeal. The first are the exemptions. So we kind of discussed a little bit the first exemption, which MMP is requesting for the property, which is an exemption for the school. That would be exemption request under section 22(1)(d) of the Manitoba Assessment Act. The second is a request for the under section 23(1)(I), which would be a request for the not-for-profit community organization to be exempt as well. And then the last component we have is a requested value for an assessment. So I'll take the board through this and we can go through each one of these points one by one, please. So if the board will turn with me to page 4. On page 4, we have the current assessment. This has been provided by the Manitoba Assessments search website. Here it just outlines the history in terms of valuation for the property. You can see that the building obviously came in line in 2023, and that value had increased significantly. Page 5, if they'll take a look at that, that is a requested value for the property. Now, the assessment department has valued the property using the cost approach. It's our position that given the fact that this is a privately owned rink, anytime that this would sell, the purchaser would be looking at this as the cash flow. So they'd be looking at this as an investment. So much as the same as you would look at buying a hotel, or you'd be looking at buying an apartment building. You'd be looking at what are my revenues, what are my costs, and making a determination based on those parameters when making your decision on terms of what the purchase price is. Now, understanding that certainly the cost approach is one of the values that would be considered. However, unfortunately, in assessment theory, you have the cost approach, you have the income approach, and you have the sales approach. Hypothetically, they all should come to the same value, but they don't. And if you had someone who's going to sell an arena, you don't have someone who's going to be buying it is going to be looking and saying, what's cheaper, buy an arena or build an arena? And they're certainly going to be looking at the income approach when they're making a determination of what to buy it for. So that's where we're going. We'll get to that point in a little bit, and I'll provide more information as we get there. Page 7. So starting on page 7, continuing on until pages 15. These are just the information that has already been provided by the assessment department. This shows the cost information for the building. So we won't go through that as it's already been discussed, but that's there for the board's reference. Page 16, we just have a map of the property. The first map is from the assessment department. I apologize. It looked better when it was in color. Unfortunately, we printed out. It was in black and white. And then the second is a satellite map, just showing again the location. But again, I think we've seen that where that has been outlined from the assessment department. So now if we move to page 17, we'll get started on the first issue, which is tax exemption. Now, it sounds like the assessment department has already agreed with us on the question of whether or not the academy should be exempt. I guess the question then becomes how much of that building should be exempt because of the academy, for the academy. So our understanding, as mentioned, section 22(1)(d) of the Manitoba Assessment Act holds that when, holds that private or public schools receive an exemption through the assessment process, and that exempts them from both realty as well as school taxes for that particular property. The background to this is that the Manitoba, when they were drafting the Assessment Act, outlined broad categories of properties that they wanted to be exempt from taxes or from realty. So these are things like schools, hospitals, hospitals, in certain groups that help the general public. And as part of that, as mentioned, the school part was one of the considerations. Now, when we take a look at the Western Canadian Hockey Academy, which occupies the building, we can see that the Western Canadian Hockey Academy provides students grades 5 to 6, 7 and 8, as well as high school, an opportunity to focus their days spending on both academics and hockey. So it's important to note that this covers both the academic and the hockey part. As well, when we take a look, we can see that and when we look, the academy provides opportunity for schooling for middle schoolers, so the 5 and 6, 7 and 8 crowd on the property. They focus on the 6 core subjects, so math, English languages, science, social studies, health, and art. And if we flip to the next page, we can actually see that they have 2 teachers on staff that are doing this teaching. They have indicated that their program follows the Manitoba Department of Education standards and guidelines. So again, I think when we take a look at that, and I don't think the assessment department is arguing with us, we do feel that that should be received an exemption. Now, where we are going to differ a little bit, so 2 things. One, first in terms of the area. So we had received an email from Jason Roblin, who's the CEO of the organization that has the property, and he had indicated something like 6,000 square feet. If the board turns with me to page 9, you can see an email correspondence between Jason Roblin and myself. We had asked in terms of how much of the property, you take a look there, had been used, so education, how much of the property had been used by the WCHA. Jason had indicated 2 classrooms that are used exclusively by WCHA, the private school. These classrooms would be approximately 6,000 square feet space total. So again, when we had this conversation from the owner or from the CEO of the property, he had indicated 6,000 square feet. Additionally, he had indicated that they have service time of 2.5 hours per day, 5 days a week, 9 days a month. Now, understanding the assessment department's position, they're taking the position that it's only the classrooms that should be exempted. It's our position that that's not necessarily the case. We know that schools offer a wide variety of different things. They have educational components. They have fields where they play football. They have gyms where they do various activities. Again, this would be no different than a school that would have, the same kind of idea, like a dodgeball court in the back of behind a school. No one would question whether or not that's being used by the school. Everyone would agree that would clearly fall underneath the exemption component and would be exempt. In this case, instead of a dodgeball court or a football field or a soccer pitch, what we're looking at ice time. So we know that 2.5 hours per day for the academy is used for these students. The school, and it does not sound like the assessment department is disputing this, the academy should be considered a school, and thus, if it's being considered a school and the ice time is considered something that is integral to the school, then it's our position that ice time as well should be exempt. Now, we're not asking for the full rink to be exempt. We understand that it is ice that is least rented out in other situations. So what we've done to calculate what the percentage should be is we've taken a look at the rink. We've determined that Monday to Friday, the rink is open from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., so 16 hours a day. On Saturdays and Sundays, it's open from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. You can just reference page 18 if you'd like. Using these, we calculate 110 hours the rink is available per week, which is 5,720 hours per year. So the 110 multiplied by 52. When we use the same calculations for the ice time used by the Western Academy, Hockey Academy, we calculated about 187.5 hours, which is about 8.52% of the total ice time. Again, when we take a look at this, we also realize that the ice doesn't comprise the entire building. So we've just simply said, we've run a ratio. We know that the ice is roughly about 48% of the total building area, 48% of the time. So we're asking for a 4% adjustment we're asking for a 4% adjustment for the ice time to be applied for exemption. So 4% for exemption to account for the ice time that's being used by the academy. The remaining space is determined by the classroom space. We use 6,000 square feet divided by the total area of the building, which is roughly 60%. So between 60% for the classroom space, 4% for the ice space, ice time, we're getting 20%, a 20% request for the exemption for the property, which again, we feel would fall within the criteria of the, within legislation. Any questions on that so far? I know that also, if I'm going fast, please let me know and ask me to slow down. I know that I'm throwing a lot of numbers very quickly at you. Really at the end of the day, what we're just saying is, we think that it's not just the classroom space that needs to be exempted, but also the ice time that needs to be exempted. We aren't asking for the entire sheet of ice to be exempted because we understand that's not reasonable, but certainly a component of that ice time is used by the academy. It's no different than what you would have for a school using, their fields for sport. Same idea, same concepts. So that's the first exemption request. If the board turns with me, starting on page 22. So page 22, we just have a little bit of information about the Western Canadian Hockey Academy, outlining just the use of that space, the fact that they are providing the core subjects. On page 25, we can see that they have just a discussion of facilities. Within the facilities, you can see that they are outlining the fact that they have academics. So they have, this is on page 25, they have space dedicated to the classrooms. Page 27, we have the staff. At the bottom, you can see education. You can see that there's a high school education advisor on the bottom of page 27. And then if you look on the top of page 28, you can see that they indicate a principal, head teacher as well. And then page 29, we just have a biography of the teacher. When you take a look at the biography, you can see that she does have an education degree, that she has experience teaching, and has completed her master's in education degree, master's of education degree in school guidance and counseling. So again, we can see that they do have certified teachers on staff here. Again, I don't think anybody's debating the fact whether or not there's a school in place. I just want to give a little bit of guidance there. If we take a look on the next page, page 31, so we have the main arena calendar and facility booking. So what you'll notice here is when you take a look at the facility booking on page 31, you can actually see here, so starting on Monday, going till Friday, 7 o'clock, grade 9 and 10, main ice, 8:15, grade 11 and 12, 9:45, grade 7 and 8. And then again, if you take a look, you can see player 1v1 player 12 and 1:15. You can see grade 5 and 6 main ice. So you can see again, this is just going to reiterate the point that the school is using the ice in connection with the academy that they are running. Again, it would be much the same as what you would see for a typical school. Page 33, we have the same timeline for December as well. Again, you can take a look Monday to Friday, similar idea. You can see that ice time is being used by the school on each one of those days. The board turns with me to page 35. So starting on page 35, again, we just have a little bit more information about the Hockey Academy. Just highlighting the fact that they are running a school that is consistent with the education requirements for the province of Manitoba. And then again, we can see some more information on page 37 and 38. So that's the first question of exemption, is in regards to the Hockey Academy and what percentage exemption should be applied. I don't think anyone's disagreeing that the hockey academy should be exempt. It's just a question of what percentage of the building should be exempt. The next question comes to, in terms of the community rink. So again, section 23(1)(I) of the Manitoba Assessment Act indicates that subject to sections 25 and 26, real property is exempt from taxation for school purposes where real property is 1, owned by, or 2, held or leased by a municipality,
Sorry, it's leasehold title,
leasehold, sorry,
not a lease, this is a lease.
yes, a leasehold title,
Okay.
which also
Is it
would be, which would be a lease. So,
No, those are two different.
We'll get there.
okay, well,
A
my,
leasehold title would be registered and certified like a title, like a registered
On the
title. So it would be registered through Random Land Titles, or, sorry, Manitoba Land Titles, if it was a leasehold title.
my understanding is that the decision can be made if a title so a lease is in place. So a lease is a legal agreement where they have space within the property. You can see leases in a number of instances. And in those situations, the tenant that's in the building, so let's say you have Goodwill, is obviously carrying control of that space. Whether or not that leasehold is registered on title is a determination that is made by the tenant. Typically, a lease is registered on title when they want to protect the building, when they want to protect the lease when the building's sold. So there's other factors at play. I guess we can agree to disagree here. Leasehold title is correct. However, my interpretation is a lease in place would be this, in this case, because that's typically what you see in these situations. So, and again, when we take a look, a municipality, community association, service club, public recreation commission, or other public body or group that serves a local community and not occupied, used, or operated for profit, but for a community hall, community recreation area, community center, community rink, to the extent that the improvements are not used as licensed premises within the meaning of the Liquor, Gaming, and Cannabis Control Act. So when we take a look at this, we have Hockey Brandon that is within the property. They have an agreement to lease 900 hours of ice time from the arena, from the rink. So again, what we note here is Hockey Brandon is a not-for-profit organization committed to promoting and encouraging and improving minor hockey in the city of Brandon. The organization has struck a deal with the arena and have committed to a minimum of 900 hours of ice time. We have provided a lease for the board's reference there. It'd be MMP's position that Hockey Brandon meets the definition of the group that serves the local community. We know that they're improving minor hockey within the city of Brandon. They are a not-for-profit organization, which we know, which we have their financials and we can show they're a not-for-profit organization. And would meet the requirements for the school tax exemption. So if the board will turn with me, to page 41, please. So on page 41, we have the ice rental agreement. So this is between the arena and Hockey Brandon Inc. You can see here that they agreed at point 1 to a minimum of 900 hours of ice time for the arena. If the board will turn with me, starting on page 45. Starting on page 45, we have the financial statements for Hockey Brandon. If you look on page 3, you can see the first paragraph, management is responsible for preparation and presentation of the accompanying financial statements, including responsibility for significant accounting judgments and estimates in accordance with the Canadian accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. So there we can see they've indicated that this is a not-for-profit organization. If the board will turn with me, continuing on till page 9, or page 53, please. And I apologize, the page numbers I'm referencing in the bottom right-hand corner. It's gonna get a little confusing, but M&P page something of 102 would be what we're looking for. So if you look at page 53, if you look at point 1, the description of the organization, Hockey Brandon is committed to promoting, encouraging, and improving minor hockey in the city of Brandon, providing each player who becomes registered with the association with an opportunity to play organized sports, to organize and regulate leagues or development programs for various age groups. You can also see the fact that it's exempt for income tax under the Income Tax Act. So again, what we're showing here is the fact that then you move down, 7.2, the financial statements have been provided in regards to the not-for-profit organization. So what we're looking to showing here is that Hockey Brandon is a not-for-profit organization, and they are providing support to the community. So it would be our position that this would qualify for an exemption under section 23, subsection 1I. Now I guess the question becomes, how much of the building should be exempt? So again, same idea. We know that they need 900 hours of ice time. We aren't asking for the entire building to be exempt, but rather we're saying, since we know that Hockey Brandon uses 900 hours of ice time, what percentage of that ice time, what percentage is 900 hours of the overall ice time that the arena has? So again, we run a similar calculation of what we had done before. Based on the overall ice time for the year and the 900 hours, we are calculating 7.5% of the ice time should be considered as exempt, as it's being occupied, the time that is being used by Hockey Brandon should be considered as occupied by Hockey Brandon. As such, because it's being occupied by a tax exempt tenant and they would meet that definition of exemption, that's why we're requesting 7.5% of that, 7.5% of assessment be deemed exempt, school tax exempt, to account for the use of time by Hockey Brandon. So if the board will turn with me, so those are the two issues on exemption. If the board will turn with me to page 59, please. So on page 59, we have the valuation component for the property, the valuation of the property. So again, when determining an assessment for a property, there's three different approaches that can be used. There's a sales comparison approach. So that looks at similar sales within the market and uses those as a good indicator. So a great example would be a home. So a lot of homes sell, there are enough that transact where you can get a pretty good sense of what your home's going to be sell for based on the other homes that are within the market. That's the first approach. Second approach is the cost approach. So it looks at what the replacement value of the building would be, as well as the land value of that site. Again, the cost approach is a helpful approach, in some situations. However, it does have its limitations. The last consideration is the income approach. So the income approach looks at what is the cash flow for the property. So it's typically what's used for commercial properties. If you are buying an office building, if you're buying a retail building, if you're buying an industrial building, you're saying, what can I get for the rent for the space? Is the vacancy rate going to be like within the market? What do I think my risk is going to be? And then you make that determination. You use that information to determine what should I pay for the space. So when M&P took a look at this property, one of the considerations we had to make was how to value an arena. Again, the problem is most community rinks are owned by the community. So they don't typically sell. When you take a look at the big arenas, again, they typically are done with tax agreements in place with the municipality, so they are getting some sort of tax cut, or they are part owned by the municipality as well as the province. So again, it becomes a bit of a different kettle of fish. This arena becomes a little bit unique in just the way the fact that it is a private rink that was built. So as we were taking a look at this, one of the considerations we had was, if they were to sell this rink, how would you sell it? Who would buy it, and what would you buy it? Why would you buy it? So obviously, when you're buying something, especially if you're buying an industrial building or a retail building to use for your own purposes, you're running the numbers. You're saying, okay, what's it going to cost me to buy versus what can I buy it? What can I buy it for? And if you're running the numbers and you're saying, okay, this property has more expenses or the revenue's not quite as big and I can get it for a lower price, well, then you're going to buy it based on the cash flow. And that's what our concern is for this property. That's why when we take a look at it, the nature of the rink does not allow the owner to recoup their expenses. So you pay ice time, you pay a flat fee for ice time. You don't have the opportunity to go back and say, oh, by the way, I also have all these other costs. I need you to pay something more. That's not how it works. So you're limited in terms of the revenue you can bring in, but your expenses are always on the back end. So that's why when we took a look at the property, we said, okay, probably the best way to look at it is, what is the expenses? What is the revenue? What does that look like? We also took a look and said, what do other provinces do? What do other municipalities do when they're looking at this? Try to get some guidance from a wider grouping of properties. What we were able to determine was that the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, so MPAC out of Ontario, when they're looking at their arenas, they're using the income approach as well. So again, we can see the fact that there is some additional support, again, understanding that Ontario is not Manitoba, but again, it just provides some support of how are these properties valued in instances where they have more of them. So if the board will turn with me to the next page, so that would be page 60. So on page 60, what we provided is we provided the income and expense statements, or the income and expenses for the arena. So what we can see is that between 21 and 22, there was a little over $555,000 worth of revenue. For 22 and 23, we got just a little over $1 million worth of revenue. When you take a look at the cost of goods sold and then look at the expenses, you can see that they have fairly significant expenses. Almost $400,000 of expenses in between June and May of 22. And just shy of $850,000 of expenses for that next year. So again, if you're an investor, if you're buying this asset, if you're looking to buy this business, you certainly would make that consideration, saying, okay, how much am I actually going to walk away with after I've paid all my expenses? You can see that what we're looking at is a net operating income of just a little under $200,000 for between June 22 to June 23. So if the board will turn with me to pages 62 and 63, what we provided is we have provided the profit and loss information for the arena. This is where we've taken our information from. Now there are certain things that we have left out, so we've grouped the income. They have income coming in from a variety of different sources. We've grouped the revenue, and you can see the total income that we've used highlighted there. When we take a look at the expenses, we've only considered the expenses related to the property. So there's expenses that we haven't considered. Those would be things like amortization, interest on debt, because those are related to the business. And that's not what we're valuing. We're not valuing the business, but we're valuing the realty instead. So we've excluded those. But the rest are the expenses that we've used. And that's how we've come up with our net operating income of just a little under $200,000 when we're taking a look at this property. If the board will turn with me to page 65, this is the methodology guide for valuing large sports stadiums within Ontario. Again, we recognize that this is in Ontario, but it's also always helpful to understand what other organizations have done. We can see here, if you look at page 5, that MPAC values 722 professional sports complexes within Ontario. And when we take a look, we can see the fact that they are looking, we can see the fact that, if the board turns with me, sorry, just give me 1 second here. I apologize, I had it earlier on. Sorry. Yeah. So if you can turn to page 72. On 72, the board outlines at the bottom of the page the 3 approaches to value. Under the 3 approaches to value, it says MPAC predominantly uses the income approach to value large sports stadiums. So we can see that other organizations or other assessment departments have determined that looking at the cash flow from these properties makes the most sense when valuing them, just because, again, that would be considered by any purchaser for the property when they're looking at buying it, is what the cash flow is. So, really, the main reason for this is just to show the fact of how they're valued. If you look on page 80, they provide a example of how to value the valuation of a large sports stadium, and they go through the revenues, they go through the expenses, and they run the same calculation as what we have done ourselves. Calculate what the net operating income is. The next question that we have to look at is what's the correct capitalization rate to use for a property? So when you're buying a property, you're saying what's the income, and then you're saying I know I'm going to buy this income and I'm going to have it for a number of years. So you can't just look at the income for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. You have to say, how do I make a determination to come up with a value that makes sense for the person I'm buying it from? Because of course they're making, whatever they're making per year. So that's where a capitalization rate is applied. So a capitalization rate basically says, here's the income, this is what the rate of return we're expecting is, and they divide the two numbers, and that gives you what the value of that property is going to be. So that's hypothetically your cash flow over the rest of the life of the property. So the capitalization rate always becomes a difficult question when you're looking at an asset like this, because again, typically the way you calculate a capitalization rate, you say this is the cash flow for the property, this is the sale price, you divide the cash flow by the sale price, that gives you your capitalization rate. In this instance, because we didn't have it, we have to say, well, what's the best comparable to use? In this case, we felt that industrial properties within the city of Brandon would be the most reasonable. When we take a look at the type of construction, when we take a look at the type of use, they're very similar in terms of finish. It's not an office building. You don't have the interior finishes like you would at an office building. It's not a retail building. It would be kind of akin to a gym, right? At the end of the day, it's an open space that you have, in this case, skating. It could be just as easily fitness machines, same idea, would be the consideration. So we've identified 5 properties that have transacted within Brandon. You can find them on page 81. These properties have transacted between 2018 and 2020. That's 59 Limestone Way, 125 Middleton Ave, 501 Middleton Ave, and 140 Industrial Drive. What we've done is we've taken those sale prices of those properties. You can see they've sold for values ranging from just a little over $1 million to $3.95 million. We've then estimated what their revenue would be. So what's rental rate, what's a vacancy rate, to calculate the net operating income for each one of those properties. Dividing the net operating income by the sale price, we get our capitalization rate. So when we take a look at the capitalization rates, we see those capitalization rates range from a low of 7.18% up to a high of 8.69%. When we take an average, we get 8%. So that's how we determined a capitalization rate. Said, let's take a look, what's the most reasonable property that we could look at? It would be an industrial property, get an 8% capitalization rate from that. We then apply that 8% capitalization rate to the net operating income. And if the board turns with me to the next page, page 82, here's where we have our valuation. So we have our revenue, we have our cost of goods sold, and then we have our expenses. We carry all that down. We get a net operating income of just a little under $200,000. We divide that by a capitalization rate of 8%. That gives us a value of $2,463,585 for that. And again, understanding there's multiple ways we can value the property, but when we take a look at this, when we look at how this would sell in the market, anyone buying it would be looking at the cash flow. So while we do recognize that the cost approach is one way of looking at valuing these properties, again, I think there's a reason why you don't see a lot of privately owned rinks within communities. It's just, it doesn't make a lot of fiscal sense, to be perfectly honest. They tend to be more expenses, less revenue than what you would expect. And at the end of the day, if you were taking a look and you're looking at buying a rink, would you buy a rink where you know that you're only going to make a little bit, $200,000 per year, and that's uncertain with the expenses that you have? Again, you're certainly going to be considering that as an investor or as a business owner who's going to be running that rink. You certainly want to know what that's going to be. So in conclusion, when we take a look at the property, Based on the exemption, so based on the education use component, we are requesting 20% or 21% be exempt from realty taxes. So that would account for the classroom space as well as the ice time that the academy has. We'd request that 7.5% be exempt from school taxes. So that's related to the ice time that Hockey Brandon has, and is prorated over the time for the rink. And then when we're taking a look at the valuation, we're looking at the income approach as we feel it's the most reasonable way to value the property. And we're asking for 2.463 million on that to account for the fact that, you know, if it were selling in the market, that would be a consideration. If the board will turn with me, starting on page 85. So 85, we provide the leases that we've used when determining a rental rate for the properties. We can see that we've used rents from similar industrial properties located within Winnipeg, the arm of Rosser, we have the arm of Springfield, as well as industrial leases for similar larger properties. When we take a look at page 86, we provided the sales. So the first one is 59 Limestone Road. So this is the first industrial building that we've looked at that transacted. So this building transacted for $3.95 million. Again, not a perfect example of the arena, but you can see the fact that the type of construction is similar, the size of the building is similar. So there's a lot of similarities that we have there. Page 88 is just another view from the side of that property. And then page 90 and 91 are overhead views. Page 92 is 125 Middleton Ave. So this would be the second sale that we've used in our capitalization rate analysis. Just for the board's reference, if you look on page 81, so this property sold for 2.81 million. Again, when we take a look at the property, not exactly the same, but very similar in terms of the type of property that you'd be looking at for this particular property, in terms of just the nature of the building. When you take a look at page 95, we have 105 Middleton. So this is a slightly older building. But again, similar idea in terms of the type of building. And then finally, when you look on page 98, we have 140 Industrial Drive. So 140 Industrial Drive has a mezzanine space in the front of the building, and then more open in the back. So again, not exactly the same as the arena, but you can see the similarities that are being drawn there. So again, those are the properties that we've looked at when determining a capitalization rate and what capitalization rate to apply. Again, we do feel that the income approach in this, for this particular instance, makes the most amount of sense. With that, I conclude my presentation. I welcome any questions from the board or from the assessment department. Thank you.
In your assessment of those properties that were sold commercially in Winnipeg, did that also include the purchase of the business? Or is that just a sale of the building?
Just the sale of the building. Now, granted, there were leases in place. In some cases, there were leases in place. In some cases, there weren't. So it depends. But at the end of the day, we have to ignore the leases that are in place and just say, we have to look at this as it is. But my understanding is for the sales in Brandon, those were just for the businesses. Those were for the buildings that did not include the businesses. Yes.
On page 82 there.
82, yes.
Number 6, so you're asking the value of the property should be reduced to 2.4 million
Yes, 2.463 million, yes.
compared to what the assessor is asking.
Yes, I believe that's 4.89 million, yeah.
So you're asking this board to reduce it by 50%.
I am. We are looking at it two very different ways. So the assessment department is looking at what the cost to build it would be. And I'm saying, well, cost to build is one thing, but what's the market value? What would they sell? What would someone buy this property for? And I would disagree that methodology makes sense. Again, when you're bought, the cost approach is great if you were building a rink yourself. If the community was saying, okay, well, we're either gonna buy a rink or we're gonna build a rink, let's run the numbers, let's see what makes the most sense. You know, if they want a specific rink, yes, they're gonna build it, and they're not too, you know, especially if they're not worried about what the costs are gonna be. But if you're running a business, if I say, hey, why don't you buy this business? You should buy this business, or you should buy this property, here's what the revenues are, here's what the expenses are. I think anybody who's looking to buy looking at the market value would certainly be considering that. And the cost approach doesn't consider the costs and the revenues. And I think that's certainly an important consideration in this situation. So I do recognize that there is a big difference, a big gap. I think that really highlights the challenge when it comes to determining what do you think is the right value, what do you think is the right approach, income approach, or the valuation approach to the property.
Any questions?
The arguments that you guys have made to each other, have you made them before? Like, are they, you've already discussed this?
Yes.
We're not, you know
Yeah.
what each other was going to say.
Yeah.
Like, you weren't, didn't seem surprised. That's
No,
what
we've been discussing this for a while.
Yes.
Okay.
Bob, you got a question? What,
We have, what,
We have
Well,
a few.
what really surprises me, I mean, that's the first time we've seen these documents. It's such a vast difference from the assessor to the applicant.
Mhm.
Like, you're talking half the value. And that's the challenge that you're putting on this board is
My
such a,
question for you guys is, why did you use the cost approach?
Because this is a very unique property in that it is an arena, but it is also a school. And arenas and schools typically don't sell on the open market. So there is no real concrete income data to use to value it. So the cost approach is what is typically used when valuing unique structures. You would use the cost approach for hospitals, schools, any of those larger unique properties that don't typically sell in the marketplace. The Keystone Center, like all of that, those types of structures would be valued on cost.
So that's the province's typical way of assessing a property of this type.
Industry,
Yes.
that's
a
industry,
normal
that's
precedent
industry
for the
standards.
province.
Yeah, not just provincial industry standards.
Well, you said industry standard though. He provided evidence that in Ontario they're using
NPAC, yeah.
Yes, which is income based.
We haven't looked out of province as we are in Manitoba. So we have looked at what Manitoba does.
Gotcha. So industry standard in
Well,
Manitoba.
Yeah.
Okay.
We use costing of Manitoba, but there are like costing manuals, like Marshall and Swift would declare, like identify this as a unique property. Or unique structure, sorry.
okay. yeah,
We're-
so, yeah,
okay.
go right.
So in your presentation, you are saying that this property is a nonprofit on one hand, but you're also saying that it's for profit on the other. How do you justify it being both? Because it can't be both.
We're not, we're saying,
Sure you are,
no, we're saying Hockey Brandon is a not-for-profit organization.
but you're trying to get an exemption based on the fact that you're leasing to a nonprofit. So you're trying to say that the property is nonprofit because you want this exemption. But you're also saying that the income approach should be used because you're trying to make money.
No, so we're saying that Hockey Brandon is leasing space within the property.
Mhm.
And we're saying Hockey Brandon is a not-for-profit organization. We're not saying the arena is not a not-for-profit
But you
organization.
also,
But we're saying Hockey Brandon is a not-for-profit organization, much the same as what you would see for any, for example, how many times you drive down the street and you see a Salvation Army that has leased space within a retail strip mall? They are a not-for-profit organization, they have space within the strip mall, should they pay property tax, or should they be paying taxes that would cut into their overall operating costs? No, they get an exemption because they are occupying that space. So that's the same idea here. but instead of physically occupying the space, they have 900 hours of ice time. It's the same idea.
To follow back to that same example, the strip mall doesn't get the break. The Salvation Army gets the
Yes.
break, right?
Correct.
And,
Yeah.
and the strip mall makes rent and revenue off of that lease.
Yeah.
And just as the arena is making rent off of Hockey Brandon, even though they're a not-for-profit, on page, let me find my pages here. On page 25 of our brief, number 6 in the ice rental agreement, you can see how much they are charging Hockey Brandon per hour. So they are not giving them the ice for free. They are still making money off of the not-for-profit.
And
So
that's,
then,
but that's
so then they're asking, you're
No, but that's like-
trying to have the best of both worlds.
no, that's like everything else. When you look at the Salvation Army, they pay rent to the landlord. So they're paying rent to the landlord. Their rent is good, and then there's operating costs. Their rent and operating costs are going to be dependent on what the operating costs are for the business. So yes, they get a break there. Same
I
idea.
don't know, but I'm backing up to the strip mall.
Yeah.
I'm treating him as a rink guy.
Right.
He doesn't get to cut his taxes because he's renting to the Salvation Army.
No.
Okay.
Well, so no, he does. Because the Salvation Army is in the building and is occupying the building, and they qualify for exemption underneath legislation, the Salvation Army would be exempt.
Yes.
Okay,
Right?
so,
So the space of the Salvation Army should be exempt from taxes, and they shouldn't be paying taxes on that space.
So does the strip mall get the break? I don't think the strip mall
No, they
get
do
the
not,
break.
no. That would be the difference of a lease agreement, which this is a lease agreement that's in place for the rink. A leasehold title is what's an exemption. So that is if someone actually has a title that's registered through Manitoba land titles and held as registered owner as a leasehold title. And that would mean that they basically
when you
are
pull the
owning,
title, they are listed on it as.
which is different than a lease agreement. A leasehold title basically means that your ownership or you're the registered owner and holding ownership in that way. So you would get an exemption.
I have personally I do follow you with the ice time, okay? I'm not sure why we wouldn't, or there wouldn't be a tax exemption for the ice time if it's considered educational time, and it seems like it is. That one I'm kind of siding.
So under the public schools, like,
Oh, yeah, that's this one.
yeah. So basically, part of the school too is their administration fee. There's a fee to go to this school, right? Which includes the hockey and includes ice time. Whereas public schools, there's not. Are you familiar with what the fee is or the entry fee for?
But this is no different than the private school. Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Yes,
you
so
say.
core subjects are what are what we're considering part of the school, which are taught in the classrooms. There's quite a substantial fee to be registered for this school, which again, is that attributed to the ice time? Like, are the fees, I know there's a cost to go to school. So is that in your?
Does that include their ice time also?
Well, include everything. It's like St. John's Race Court in Winnipeg, right? You pay a fee to go to the school, and there's academics, and there's also other components that come along with that. So whether you're playing hockey or whether you're playing football, those are all tied in to what the fees that you're paying, because you're going to the school, you have those other things, other components. It's no different than if you're playing soccer. You don't pay an additional fee when you're going to gym class. It's gym class. So again, it's just gym class in a different format.
Okay, we will agree to disagree on that one. So page 14 of our report, again, just going back to the community hall aspect of your ask for exemption. As Ashley alluded to, a leasehold title is very different than just having a lease. And in legislation, section 23(1)(I), owned by a municipality, community association, service club, public recreation commission, or other public body or group that serves the local community. The owner is not any of those. Held under leasehold title by. A nonprofit is not on the leasehold title for that property. Even if they were, it also states is not occupied, used, or operated for profit. It also states that to the extent that any improvements are not used as a licensed premises. We know that there is a liquor license on this property. We have included it in our brief on one of the pages. On pages 28 and 29, it shows the liquor license that is in place on this property. So even if they were a leasehold title owner, the property is still being used for profit because you are trying to value it on the income approach, saying that it is for profit. And it is a licensed premises.
But yes, the premises has a bar, but we're not asking for the bar to be exempt. We're asking for the ice to be exempt. And last I checked, I don't think anyone's drinking beer and skating around on the ice. So again, we're being pretty narrow in our request here. We're not even asking for the dressing rooms to be exempt. We're saying 900 hours of ice time. What is the total amount of ice time they have, and how does that equate to the building? So we are very specifically, narrowly looking at just the ice that, again, we would argue would not be you're not going to have someone drinking and skating.
I just wanted to point out the legislation and the wording of the legislation for that, in respect to your claim for the nonprofit portion and what you believe should be exempt. So back to your 6,000 square feet on page 18 of your report, 6,000 square feet of classrooms. Do you have a plan or a map or anything from the owner showing where those 6,000 square feet are located?
I do not. I just have the information from the CEO who
Okay.
indicated that it's 6,000 square feet.
Because based on the plans that came through planning that we used and in our inspection of the property, it's not 6,000 square feet. Have you been to the property to inspect it?
I have not gone to the property, no.
Okay. So you have nothing to back up where that 6,000 square feet came from?
I have the document that you can see in front of me from Jason Roblin, who's the CEO of the organization, who had indicated 6,000 square feet, 2.5 hours of ice time, 5 days a week, 9 months a year.
Okay. Then if the board is entertaining the thought of the income approach, on page 60, you show the income and expense statement for the property. $242,000 in salaries. Does that include the teacher's salaries, or are these expenses all just for the building? Or do they include the business that is running within the building?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. We should have asked for clarification. You're right. As far as we're aware, it was based on the business itself, the rink. But we did show you the income and expense statements that we used. We calculated that. So J&G Homes Arena. As far as I'm aware, this is not related to the Western Canadian Hockey Academy.
So there are $242,000 worth of wages per year to operate the arena?
That's what this says. My understanding is the Western Canadian Hockey Academy is separate. It's a separate organization. It's not the arena,
Okay.
but rather a tenant in the arena that is running, that they're using this space. So my understanding is that the information you see here is for the arena itself.
does the owner have a lease agreement with said tenant?
I unfortunately can't speak to what they do and don't have. I haven't seen a lease. I would assume that there's some sort of agreement, as they are occupying the space. And we do know that the Western Canadian Hockey Academy is not J&G Homes Arena. But beyond that, I can't say anything more.
Okay. I just want to point out also in the profit and loss statement on 62, that there are a number of expenses that wouldn't be considered allowable expenses when conducting the income approach.
Correct. So that's why we've removed things like interest on long-term debts. We've removed amortization. We've removed.
But you didn't, because interest on long-term debt is right here at $166,000.
Right, but if you take a look on page 60, if you cross-reference page 60, you'll see that interest on long-term debt is not there.
Okay,
So we've
but
actually-
the $200,000 in salaries still are.
Right,
Okay.
because it's still, because the salaries you need to run the property, they run the rink. So there's gonna be costs associated, it's like a hotel. You're
Absolutely.
gonna have costs associated with running the hotels, there's gonna be salaries associated with running the hotels, a rink would be no different.
There are still some expenses in this that are questionable. So on page 81 of your report here, you show rental rates of $9 to $12.95 a square foot.
Correct, when we're calculating capitalization.
If we look at your net operating income and the square footage of the building, you are saying that the rental rate for this arena should be $5.43 a square foot?
If that's the way the number works out.
You didn't?
I didn't look at it per square foot basis.
Okay.
Because that's not how we
I
look at
mean,
this.
that's the rental rate, like you're trying to value it as an income property. So would you not look at the rental rate per square foot if it was an income property?
No, we're valuing it like a hotel. So for a hotel, you're looking at what's your revenue, because your revenue fluctuates here and there. It's not a set amount of money. So, you rent a hotel room today, it's $130. You rent a hotel room tomorrow, maybe it's $120. You rent a hotel room at Christmas, it's $200. So it fluctuates up and down. And so when you're valuing a hotel, you say, what's my total revenue for the year? And what are my total expenses for the year? And you net those out. Now.
And in doing so, you're coming out to $5.43 a square foot.
And the other thing is when you take a look at the industrial properties typically have a triple net lease. So typically what happens is you say, here's my rental rate, it's $9 a square foot. Here are all my operating costs for running the properties, utilities, my property taxes, whatever associated. And those flow through and the tenant pays you a certain amount of money per year to account for that.
Yes.
So whether that's $2.50, whatever that's gonna be. So the property owner's made whole. They're not incurring any of those costs. In this case, the property owner is not made whole because they have no way to recoup those expenses. They can't recoup for the amount of time and money, the utilities that they cost to run the property. They can't recoup for the property taxes. So it's more like a gross lease, really, when we look at it, because they get a set amount of money for the ice time, or they get a set amount of money for the rental, and then everything else, all their other costs get deducted from that. So their profit at the end of the day is how much money, what's their rental for the ice time, minus all their expenses, and that's what their final number is. So it's not a reasonable assumption to say, well, the rent should be $200 an hour, because that's not a clear indication of what they're actually getting.
Okay, what did it cost to build the structure?
I don't know.
That is now the fourth time we have tried to get that information from you or the owner, and we have never been given that information.
That seems pretty important, because if any of the
Yep.
Keystone Planning District or Brandon Area Planning asked me, how much it costs to build your house, I better have an answer.
But again,
An assessment is usually lower than what that answer is.
but we're not, so two things. One, assessment is asked me, and I am only representing.
Oh, I realize that. I
So,
understand. It's
yeah,
not your fault.
so
I get that.
So like we have to keep in mind, I only have what the information I have when I ask. Whether or not the owner was asked, I don't know. Whether I I'm not sure, I haven't seen any emails on that stuff. The other reason that we've never asked that information is it's just, we don't see it's relevant, we don't see the relevancy. Again, when we take a look at this property, it's an income, there's cash flow, anyone who is a private building, anyone who's gonna buy it is buying it based on the cash flow. If I gave you the option, I say, okay, you can buy this from me for $4.8 million, or if you know you're gonna make 200 grand a year, what are you gonna pay for it? And, and you would have to then sit there and say, okay, well, is it gonna be worth 4.9 million for me to build it? Or if I know I'm only gonna make 200 grand a year, what's my return of investment? What's my rate of return on my investment? How much risk do I wanna take? It changes the narrative. So that's why we never asked that, because again, it's a private ring. Now, if this were public, if this was Keystone, it was owned by Brandon and owned by the province, that's a different story. If their ring burned down, they'd build another one, right? So then it's more relevant because they're gonna wanna know. That's not the same situation here.
Let's just say, for instance, that it costs $6 million to build.
Okay.
Would the owner be willing to sell the property for $2.6 million that you're asking the assessed value to be?
Well, if I'm losing money on a property and you need to stop the bleeding, I sold my house for less than I bought it for. I didn't want to, but it was just the realities of the market. It's what I have. I would rather not, but it's what the realities are. It's the same thing if you have an industrial building that is vacant or you're running problems and you're running into cash flow issues. You got to stop the bleeding at some time. The question is, do you want to keep losing money every year along the way, or do you just cut and run at a certain point and you say, okay, we're done. This is as good as it gets.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Go to page 82.
82.
You're arguing how much the value of that building is. The way I'm hearing it, on your insurance, is it insured to replace the value of that building? What's the value? 51,000?
51,000.
646. Are you insuring that building to replace it, what it's worth?
I would assume so, but I also don't think that the value should be based on what, if you burn down your building, what you get from insurance.
Well, I do my house. I insure my house too.
But it's different. When you live in a home, it's different because then it's a cost, it's a whole different situation. When you're doing a building, again, I think the question has to be, if you know you're gonna lose money on a business, if you own a business and you're losing money every single year, you're always running in the red, you're never getting ahead. And eventually, when do you say it? You say, I'm done. Like, I've lost money for 5 years in a row, or 10 years in a row, or 15. I don't see this turning around. It's just blowing through my savings. I have nothing left. Would you not sell at a certain point and say, I'm out? Like, I'll take what I can get and I'm out. Same question here. You know you're gonna get 200 grand. You're getting 200 grand a year on this property. Are you gonna pay 4.9 million for your 200 grand per year? Or are you gonna pay something less? So I think that's the question that you have to look at here when you consider, here's my revenues, here's my expenses. I think there's a reason why you don't see a lot of privately owned rinks in the city. Like, it's not typically done. You don't see a lot of them. And I think there's a pretty strong reason. If people,
Because no one can afford them.
the other thing is, if it were profitable, people would do it all the time. You'd see way more community rinks popping up because people are like, oh, I can make a ton of cash. But they don't, and there's a reason for it. And I think this here illustrates what that reason is, because your expenses and your expenses are higher, your revenue's lower, and when you take a look at what the end result is, it's just not there.
I have a side question for you, Susan. You asked on various occasions for that information.
Yes.
We got no laws that say you have to provide it?
Yeah, it's in legislation that it does need to be provided. I mean, the recourse to that, I guess there really isn't much. It's deferral, which doesn't apply in this case because it's the second
The
year.
recourse is a cost-based analysis that you guys have done.
Yeah. Like we're allowed to ask it, I guess, on page 15 of ours, the burden of proof for valuation would typically be on us. However, 53.3 states that where an application fails or refuses, and B is to comply with the request for information and documentation under section 16, which would be our request for cost information. The board shall, at the hearing, place the burden of proof on the applicant for all matters at hand.
But my issue is, where was the request made? Was the request made to me?
Nope, yes, several times in
Because
email.
I'm not the owner of the property.
We
We also developed,
mailed, on page 1, we mailed a letter to the owner November 21st, 2022, and we received no reply
where was the letter mailed?
to the address on file.
Do you know that it was received? The property was
I don't
under
have
construction.
that legislation with me, but legislation states that once
It would have been mailed to the registered address on title.
Oh,
So the
yeah, so
mailing
then
address
we
would
do
have
have
been
that.
on title.
But there is legislation now that states 5 days after mailing, an item is deemed received.
But the courts have also taken a look at that, and there are a number of court
But it
cases.
is
where the
currently in
courts-
legislation
I
that
mean-
5 days.
It's been requested
there are-
numerous times.
yeah.
There are a number of court cases,
Um,
there are a number of court cases where the courts have come down and said, in an instance where we can't, in the instance, it's incumbent on the assessment department to show the letter was sent and received. In instances where that can't be shown, then the question of non-compliant, the request for non-compliance is being met. So
Which
there
is fine, we're not asking for
Yeah.
non-compliance
Okay.
anyways.
It's been requested numerous.
October 31st of 2023, in an email to you, I asked you for the cost information and you did not give me that information. On November 2nd, 2023, I asked you again for the cost information and you did not supply that information. Today, I asked for the cost information and you have not supplied that information.
because I'm not the owner of the property.
But you
I'm
are
merely
here
representing-
on behalf of the
You
owner.
are the
It
applicant.
is your
No,
job
and I'm
to ask the owner to give you the answer so you can give it to us.
But it's also two things. One, the assessment was already sent prior to the information being requested from me. So the assessment was already mailed prior to me being asked for that information. I wasn't asked for the information when was the assessment mailed out? The assessment must have been mailed out in September.
We asked for the information in a letter in November.
Yeah.
At that time, if we had received it, we could have made adjustments then if it was determined that that was necessary.
But the information wasn't used for creating the assessment. The information was typically the reason that the information is being requested is to help create the assessment. In this case, the assessment had already been created. The assessment had been created, they had already sent it out, they said, this is what the value is gonna be. Then they asked for the information. I responded by saying, we did not look at the construction information because, again, we feel that the income approach is the best way of looking at it. We provided our explanation, we provided all the information to the assessment department, we have sent numerous follow-up emails asking for an update in terms of where we are, and we have not received it. So again, if we take a look at it, if we actually look at what is the purpose of that request, that purpose is to help set the assessment. The assessment had already been set far before we did even request it.
How does the owner know the cost to build the property until it's done and complete? And then once it's complete, we have 2 years to add it to the assessment roll. So once we start working on that property, that's when we send the cost information, after the building has been constructed.
Right, but the value had come up prior to being requested from me.
We
So-
did originally request it. It's
We-
like all new build, the information, a cost information request is sent out to all.
Yeah.
But again, how do we know that it got there? So again, we see courts have come down on multiple times, multiple situations where they've said, how can an owner provide information that they don't know was requested from them? So again, unless we can see here, when we're dealing with this in Winnipeg, what we see is the registered letter being sent to the owner. We see a signature on the registered letter to show that it had been received, to show that they had known, they're aware that the information had been requested. Here we see nothing in the submission to show us. We just see, we see a note saying that it'd been received. We don't know we don't know what the letter said, and we don't know when the letter was
When
received.
I requested that information from you on October 31st, is it not your duty as their agent to give that request to them? And then they would choose whether to give you that information or not?
On October 31st, the appeal had already been filed. We had already
That
filed.
doesn't matter.
We had already filed the appeal, and we
Excuse
said,
me?
no, it's wrong.
I think we've heard the arguments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
from-
100%.
From the assessor and from the applicant. I'll just leave it for the board if they have any more questions. And then I think I have, as the chairperson, I think I have to close the hearing and
Certainly.
then council can move on. We could be here
Yes.
arguing all night. I think I'm comfortable with the information. So does council have a question for the assessor or the applicant? No? Okay. And then I think I'm comfortable, as the chair of the board, to close the hearing.
Excellent.
Thank
you very
Thanks a
much.
lot. Great
Thank
presentation
you.
on both sides, so. Yeah. So I'll ask for a motion to close that hearing.
Be resolved that the 2024 Board of Revisions has concluded and the regular meeting of the Arlington Cornwallis to continue at 8:55.
8:55, have a seconder. Council Ross. You get that, Sabrina? Okay, I'll call for the question. All in favor of closing the hearing? Okay. We do have, just a second. Clicking here. Okay.
2.4.
Oh, well, I've got the resolution from you, just give me a second. Yes, yep.
Whereas the appellant and the Manitoba property assessor presented their cases to the Board of Revisions, be it resolved that the Board of Revisions shall by order confirm the assessment.
Can I have a second? Councilor Brown, anybody have a question? Nobody has it? I'll call for the question. All in favor? Okay. Let me know when you're ready there, Sabrina. I don't want to rush you. Clean up our paper. These come back to Marlene or back. I don't know how it works. How, you take these back? It's good.
Good.
Okay, we're just gonna wait for. Next thing is reception of delegations. Lynn Forbes, Great Pierce concern. You can come to the chair. Oh, you gotta. Put the. Just gonna wait for a council member. Okay, put the stopwatch on. Just give me a second here. That was a long one. We're just in a mini recess here.
Seems like it was the longest one ever.
Yeah. Terry didn't make it as exciting last time. Sorry about that. Okay, we're back at it. We will put the stop clock on here and good evening. You state your name and then I'll start it. We'd like to stay with the procedures. We'll give you 10 minutes and we're not going to interrupt. Thank you.
Good evening, Master Chairman, and thank you for letting me address the council this evening. When this council was elected, I was hopeful councilors would work together for the good of the RM. During the election, we consistently heard promises of accountability, transparency, fairness, and responsiveness. What has happened? Did you forget what you promised? I can assure you the residents have not forgotten. Although the council inherited many issues from previous councils, I believe given time to sort through the issues, learn the ropes as we have several new councillors, and working together as a unit, much would be accomplished. It's been over a year and the RM is still in disarray. Even many small issues that are an easy fix have not been addressed. To say I am disgusted is an understatement. You asked for the job, campaigned for the job, and you got the job. Now we expect you to do the job. Each one of you swears an oath of office, which includes an important statement that I will act faithfully in the office without fear, favor, or affection, and will truly, faithfully, and impartially, and to the best of my knowledge and ability, execute the duties and responsibilities of that office. Each counselor receives a counselor's guidebook, which is a concise overview, complete with details and resources for counselors. Items such as the following: role and duties of council, including decision-making, governance, representation, and stewardship, as well as council's role. Council is accountable to the public for the municipality's finances. The public will expect council to keep the municipality financially healthy and sustainable long into the future. It includes the regular financial responsibilities monthly and by date, and key deadlines as well. As per the guidebook, councilors are to actively listen, encourage resident input, investigate, ask questions, and actively participate in meetings. For your information, in my opinion, rolling your eyes while people are talking does not qualify as respectful listening. Looking at the current state of the RM's affairs, I can only deduce that most of you, or maybe none of you, have read the guidebook. If you have discovered you aren't up to the task, resign and let someone else take your place. No one said it was going to be easy. RM counselors are responsible to the ratepayers, the CAO to the council, and staff to the CAO. The CAO does not run the RM independently. The CAO is to provide guidance, continuity, and expertise, but is still answerable to the council. Regardless of the situation in the RM, the CAO is to be responsive to the ratepayers and to complete necessary functions to keep the RM operating. Looking through the monthly financials, I am guessing CAO Wilner was being paid approximately $110,000 to $120,000 per year. What was he doing besides smoking? Does the RM have a smoking policy? I consistently heard from one of the counselors that Jordan is the smartest guy in the room. Currently, the 2022 financials are still incomplete and to my knowledge have not been filed with the province. Due date June 30th. The bylaws and policies are not all updated. Committees promised, such as the aggregate and grants committees, have not been formed. The aggregate committee with residents, ag operators, and council representatives was first promised to us in October 2020. That's over 3 years ago. Other issues that plague the RM, inconsistencies and irregularities in property taxes and notices, resulted in some payers not receiving their education tax rebates. The CAO had assured the council property tax increases would be insignificant. I guess he forgot it was a reassessment year, and you all believed him. Personally, mine increased 6.3%. Lack of communication with the chain utilities resulting in delays, multiple ratepayer complaints that are not responded to or in fact not even acknowledged. Weed spraying not completed. Big surprise as the contractor breached the contract last year and was allowed to keep it this year. Only 31 miles of spraying out of 200. The RM is still not in compliance with the Provincial Noxious Weeds Act. Mowing contract, obviously no completion date was set on the contract as they were mowing the tops of the ditches in the snow November 3rd. Negligible amounts of growth with no purpose at this time of year. A Zoom meeting policy was made, and now we haven't had the Zoom function for how many meetings? Approximately 1.5 years between police board meetings. We still haven't been told how much it costs to maintain 1 mile of road, either haul road or regular roads. How hard is it? No accountability for road maintenance. Keystone Planning and Development has significant problems. RM websites and office phone messages not updated. Communications, indemnities, and supporting documentation not attached to meeting agendas. Why have there been no inspections completed of Spruce Woods Hall after a major renovation? This is concerning as it is insured by the RM. And I asked just yesterday whether it had had inspections. The RM has not begun the budgeting process for 2024, to my knowledge. Questionable health care coverage used after a councillor is out of office. How did Jordan Wilner become our CAO? The guidebook includes a hiring procedure. Did the council abandon the procedure? I have asked more than once if any references were called. Did you check any of his social media? It took me less than half an hour to determine that he moved from job to job, not upwardly, but laterally. That is curious. In my experience, he was dismissive of ratepayer concerns, unresponsive, and unwilling to perform many of the duties that were requested, and and expected of him in his position. Why did the council let the behavior continue? One of the most important bylaws in our RM, the aggregate bylaw, is on the agenda tonight. When the aggregate bylaw was introduced to be updated last fall, it was sidelined by a proofreading error. Councillors received documentation 1 week prior to the meeting to review material. There had been ample discussion on the bylaw since the municipal board hearing decision identified a wide range of concerns brought forth in the hearing of spring 2022. In addition, the province had issued a notice for increases in the mining and transportation fees August 2022. Prior to the meeting, councillors were still discussing the bylaw as it needs 3 readings to be brought into effect. Councillor Brown, who is a councillor of over 20 years, derailed the bylaw, pointing out an error on the date. While he is within his rights to do so, he was obviously aware of the clerical error and could have had it corrected any time before the meeting. Why didn't he? Is this the behavior of a team player? I attended the meeting. I was astonished that a long-standing councillor and on a significant bylaw would behave in such a manner. It cost the RM potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost transportation fees. Is this acting in the best interest of the RM? This, in addition to property tax inconsistencies on aggregate properties and remittance fee irregularities. The aggregate bylaw brought forth tonight is questionable. Where are the details which have been laid out for you by the municipal board, the provincial government, and the municipal legal council? Is this a display of good stewardship of a declining resource? Another item on the agenda tonight regards the code of conduct. Not 1, but 3 code of conduct complaints listed under the special meeting of November 3rd. I have shared the link for the RM of Cornwallis Code of Conduct as part of this presentation. Number 1693/06/2020. Please note that the code of conduct in the complaint refers to number 1639/06/2020. Another clerical error, in my opinion, does that not make the complaints invalid? Furthermore, the council guidebook clearly states that the code of conduct must be reviewed annually. I have searched through minutes and agendas. Nowhere have I found that the code of conduct has been reviewed. With the previous council, there was code of conduct complaints. Some were thrown out and in some cases filed improperly, making them invalid. Regardless of whether a complaint is valid or not, each complaint costs ratepayers a minimum of $495 per complaint. There is not a fine levied against someone who makes an invalid complaint. According to my research, if a full investigation is undertaken, it can cost $30,000 to $40,000 per complaint. 3 complaints could cost this RM $120,000. I would urge anyone that has brought a complaint to seriously reconsider unless it has validity. Unfortunately, I suspect some may be nuisance complaints. If so, expect me to be yelling from the rooftops. We have better ways to spend our RM money. This RM has multiple serious ongoing issues that are not being addressed. I recognize many problems pre-existed this council. However, some of the current council have not demonstrated the ability nor the desire to correct the situation. It is my opinion we need the province to conduct a thorough audit of the RM of Cornwallis. Ratepayers may personally request audits of the RM and may also bring formal complaints regarding the code of conduct and conflict of interest. I will be hosting a public engagement meeting and inviting the council to attend. Since taking office in 2022, there has been no open interaction between residents and council members. I hope all the council will attend and be prepared to work with the ratepayers to address our concerns and develop a strategy for moving the RM forward. I want to hear what you can do, not what you can't do. Thank you. And I will be emailing you a copy of my presentation.
Thank you. Excuse me, no applauding in the. No applauding. Okay, we got a resolution from us here.
Whereas the RM of Cornwallis received a delegation request from Lynn Forbes to address concerns regarding issues that have not been addressed and or initiated as promised, therefore be it resolved that the reception of delegation from Lynn Forbes be received by council of the RM of Cornwallis as verbally provided.
Okay, we got a seconder? Yeah, Councilor Luhan. Any questions? Okay, all in favor? Ms. Forbes, could you hand in the copy that you got tonight, or would you
I'll
rather?
just email
Email
you,
it,
that's
okay.
what you all have it, I'll send it.
Yeah, I missed the number that you mentioned, so I might need it later on. Yeah. It's good. Okay, on to the next one. Reports of committees. Any reports of committees? Reception of petitions, none. Communications. The resolution.
Be it resolved that the council there on Cornwallis approve the communications presented with the following items moved to general business. Crime Stoppers 2023-24 RM fundraiser.
So that's your resolution. Can I have a seconder? Council Maxwell, seconds it. Any questions on any of those? I just got an inquiry to the secretary, Sabrina. That the letter, and maybe the CEO, that letter from Stantec, is that something that can be made public? There's good information on there. And I've received 2 phone calls about one of those bridges, so I'm just wondering, is that something, it's not a tender document, I'm just wondering, I'll leave it up to administration to make that a public document.
I don't know.
Okay,
That's not
just
my role.
something that, I didn't see anything in there when I read it, that's why I emailed you today, so, yeah, okay, it's just something. Anyway, that's all I had, it's a very good, I think the public should see some of the decisions that we're about to make when it involves taxpayers' money, so, yeah. Okay, I'll call for the question to receive the communications. All in favor? Carried. Okay, number 8. 8.1.
Be resolved that the council there on Cornwallis do hereby adopt and approve the list of accounts for expenses for checks numbered 11640 to 11666 for a total amount of $104,579.92. And further be resolved that the council there on Cornwallis hereby adopt and approve payroll and council indemnities expenses for the amount of $57,230.82.
Okay, there's the numbers that were used, that we don't see those numbers here, just so the mover's aware. We're just seeing the indemnity, we're not seeing the payroll, so I brought that up before, remember? If you go to the list of accounts, to the resolution, recall, it mentions 57,000. We don't see those in front of us to approve, so
There,
we,
added labor distribution reports that were at the beginning of the meeting.
what's that?
They're the labor distribution reports that were added to the agenda, under added agenda,
And where is that?
when you adopted the agenda. The additions to the agenda.
Item 3,
It's there now?
it's up to item 3.
Okay. So good. Okay, just. Okay, I'm refreshing, I'm sorry. So where is it under 8.1?
It's under 3.
Under 3,
Was it?
It's the bottom one.
third last from the labor distribution report.
I don't see it. I don't see 8.3. I'll have to
No,
refresh.
no, it is 3, number 3, not 8. Go up.
At the adoption of the agenda.
Yeah. So it's there. Oh, okay. So the check register, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't see it there. Okay, so can I have a seconder? Councilor Brown? Anybody got any questions? So the only question I got, I didn't see it before, the totals match for what the motion reads? So the labor and all that? What's that?
Yeah, 104,579 is the
Yep.
one, and then
Okay.
the other one that,
Yeah, I didn't see it.
it's in the wrong spot. but-
Yeah, it's in the wrong spot, so that's why I made an inquiry before. Yeah, okay, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Okay. Now we're back down to 8.2. The unaudited financial report.
Be resolved that the unaudited financials as of November 21st, 2023 be accepted as presented.
Can I have a seconder? Councilor Ross, anybody got any questions? No, all in favor? It's unaudited, so. Okay. Bylaws.
I can't see.
You can't see it.
No, it's
The motion is there.
Be it resolved that the council of the Royal Municipality of Cornwall introduced and give first reading to bylaws 1719-11-2023, being a bylaw to repeal 1714-02-2023, the aggregate bylaw for the RM.
Second.
Councilor Brown seconds it. Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Comment to it.
What's that?
This bylaw, we're bringing in first reading, because if we don't bring first reading now, we can't do second reading before the end of the year. And the sole purpose of it is to increase the fifth license fee, which I think everybody agrees, whether you're a pit owner or a trucker or a resident, that the $10 fee was far too low for far too long, and we're raising it to $200, which is going to cover some of the cost or all of the cost of administration when we're looking at it, and we're allowing a couple of site visits for our public works people to verify activity in the pits. And that's what we're using it to justify the $200 charge.
And it's first reading. Normally you don't discuss first reading. The time is of the essence. We gotta get it going. I think when we get into second and third reading, we've got a lot of work to do. We need to review the municipal. Again, we need to review the municipal hearing as a council, look at the whole package, and there's a lot of people that had a lot of input, so we'll review it and start working on it, okay? Anybody, any question, anything else? I'll call for the question, all in favor, get the ball rolling. Yep, carried. Okay. No. We've got nothing under 9.2. There's no resolution there, or else somebody has one on the organization bylaw. So, there's no resolution, so no action, or else somebody has a resolution. If not, we'll skip right over it. There's no data there, so skip right over. Yeah. So we'll go to 10. What's that?
Just move down, finish.
Yeah. We're done unfinished business. And we do have some unfinished business there, but it's all unfinished
We'll
business.
skip over 10-1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 10.1, okay. 10.2.
Whereas the Council of Cornwall has moved the variation order to unfinished business by resolution 2023/267 at the September 19th, 2023 regular council meeting. And whereas the Council of Cornwall has moved the variation order to unfinished business by resolution at a special meeting on October 4th, 2023. And whereas the Council of Cornwall has made not function at the regular council meeting held on October 17th, therefore be resolved the Council of Cornwall has made a decision to either approve or reject the application for variation.
Approve.
Sorry, I'm not very clear there.
Are you approving it or rejecting?
Therefore be it resolved that. Just wanna make sure I know that one.
What was the variation order?
Oh, that's going to be back.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're approved? Approved. Councilor Maxwell seconds it. Any questions? Yeah.
That was the one that we had the wrong map.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had the wrong map. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good explanation there. Anybody got any question? All in favor? Carried. Yeah, good. Okay. 10.2.1. I don't know if you're 10.2.1. The motion is
Mine's
there.
loading, sorry.
Yeah,
Be it resolved that Council of Cornwallis hereby approve the application for variation order. Is that-
Yeah. that's the resolution. Seconder? Yeah. Any questions? All in favor? Carried.
The way this is listed is very confusing.
Yeah, well, that's the way the agenda is put together. Okay, 10.3.
I'll make that motion, whereas the Council of Cornwallis moved the variation order to unfinished business by resolution 2023-268 at the September 19th, 2023 regular council meeting. As whereas the Council of Cornwallis moved variation order to unfinished business by resolution 2023/293 at the special meeting on October 4th, 2023. And whereas the Council of Cornwallis made no action at the regular council meeting held on October 17th, 2023. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of Cornwallis made the decision to approve the application for a variation order.
Can I have a second? Councilor Maxwell seconds it. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay.
And we'll make the motion be it resolved that Council of Cornwallis hereby approves the application for variation order.
Second, Councilor Maxwell. I'll call for the question. All in favor? Carried. I'll just stop there. Thanks, folks, for your patience over the last few months. Appreciate it, but there was a couple of clerical errors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, okay. 11.1.
Be resolved, the Council of the RM of Cornwallis changed the scheduled February 2024 meeting date from February 20th, 2024 to February 12th, 2024.
Can I have a second? Councilor Maxwell? Just for the audience, that's one of the council members can't be here on the regular scheduled day, so we decided to change it. And thanks for everybody's cooperation. We'll call for the question. All in favor? Carried. Okay. 11.2.
I'll make the motion, whereas the RM of Cornwallis received the subdivision application of the proposed subdivision to downsize a residential lot from and consolidate the extra land with the adjacent lot to the west. The land being removed is currently used as pasture by the neighboring landowner for their small herd cattle. This is a realignment of boundaries and consolidation of the remainder of Title 2891936 to Title 2796329. And whereas the Keystone Planning District provided their feedback on the subdivision as follows. There is no comments. Be it resolved that the Council of the RM of Cornwallis hereby approves subdivision application 416-23-8557.
I have a second. Councilor Brohan. Any questions? Any concerns? I'll call for the question. All in favor? Carried. Another one here, 11.3.
I'll make that motion also. I'll have a drink of water first though, whereas the Farm of Cornwallis has received the proposed minor subdivision file to separate an existing farm dwelling from the rest of the agricultural land in order to sell the agricultural land. This application is consistent with the development plan and meets the provincial criteria for a minor subdivision, which enables it to be given conditional approval without requiring any interdepartmental circulation or planning report. And whereas community planning has issued conditional approval for the subdivision application as per section 125(1) of the Planning Act, the applicant must obtain municipal approval prior to complete other conditions of subdivision. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the RM of Cornwallis hereby approves subdivision application 4116-23-8557.
Second.
Councillor Ross seconds it. Anybody any question? Any comments? Call for the question. All in favor? Carried. 11.
Whereas Yarmouth of Cornwallis received the subdivision application of the proposed subdivision to separate rural residential yard site, 10 acres, from the rest of the property, 30.36 acres, to facilitate the donation of the remaining land to the Nature Conservancy of Canada to preserve native mixed grass prairie. The existing yard site is serviced by a sewer ejector and by an individual well. Access is onto a municipal road. And whereas Keystone Planning District provide their feedback on the subdivision as follows with no comments, be resolved that the Council of the RM of Cornwallis hereby approves subdivision application 4116-23-8557.
Councillor Brohan seconds it. Any questions, comments? I'll call for the question. All in favor? Good. 11.5, RF now.
Whereas RF now has requested tapping into an existing fiber line within the RM of Cornwallis. The proposed path addition continues north along the west side of 50th Street to a service customer at 56020 Road 112 West. Public Works has no issue with the proposed path related to the RM of Cornwallis infrastructure in the area. Therefore, be it resolved that the RM of Cornwallis approve the path addition as presented.
Seconder, Councillor Maxwell. Any questions, concerns? I'll call for the question. All in favor? Carried. 11.6. The one for the waste transfer.
Yeah, whereas the waste transfer operator for the Whiten waste transfer station brought forth reduction of residents using the transfer station to a maximum of 10 persons on the Tuesday of operations, and furthermore is requesting council to consider the waste transfer station hours for the winter months to be reduced to Saturday. Be resolved that the council, the RM of Cornwallis Council, take into consideration the recommendation of the waste transfer operator for the hours of the waste transfer station during the winter. The Whiten waste transfer hours will be amended as per the waste transfer operator's recommendations.
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Maxwell to get it into discussion with him. Yep. Anybody got any questions? Yeah, I mean, it's right in front of us. The attendant out there for the audience, White transfer station, 10 customers. As it gets colder, it will save us some money. So we'll look at it. We can always, if there's too many complaints and all that, we can revisit it. Or, yeah, so nobody has any other comments or concerns. I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Be resolved that the Council of the RM of Cornwallis received the 2024 draft emergency plan for review and comment prior to approval at the December regular meeting as updated by the emergency coordinator.
Call for the question. Councillor Maxwell? No. Any questions, comments? No. If there is none, Okay, to call for the question. All in favor? Carried. 11.8. That's it.
Whereas the Council of the Arm of Cornwallis received a letter from the Board of Directors for Manitoba Crime Stoppers requesting contributions to crime prevention and community support, and whereas Crime Stoppers is requesting 25 cents per capita resident or a contribution of the RM's choosing, therefore be it resolved that the Council of the RM wish to contribute to the Manitoba Crime Stoppers fundraiser based on the contribution of 25 cents per resident.
Call for Councilor Maxwell, seconder.
I just want to add something to that. That's, I think it was back in March, we attended a meeting with the Southwest Caucus for Western Manitoba. And Crime Stoppers made a presentation at that meeting. And there will be some signage that's made available to us that we can place in strategic locations throughout the municipality to let residents know that it's a Crime Stoppers, Crime Watch area.
That one. I'll add to Councilor Ross's comment. I was at that Western Caucus meeting. It was a good presentation he put on there. What we will do, I'll maybe talk to administration. He was from Killarney in that area, was retired. I think he volunteered, put on a real good presentation. I was really impressed. We'll see if we can come in here and tell our residents what that 25 cents per capita does for us. Yeah, I was really impressed. So, okay, nobody else has a question? Call for the question. All in favor? Carried. Okay. I think 11.9, it really doesn't do anything for us. We can add it to the next meeting, but I just read it and there's no value passing the resolution for that one. Okay, 11.1. Councilor Brown.
11.11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
11.
I'm declaring a conflict on.
No,
that.
11.10, sorry, yeah.
Being,
Yeah.
some sort of.
Declare the conflict, I mean. Okay. Wait, the resolution is in front of you.
10.
What's that?
10.
11.10, yeah, 10.
Be resolved that the Arm of Cornwallis purchase gift certificates for each municipal office, police and public works department staff in the amount of $100 and purchase gift certificates for each member of the waste transfer station, WPT and EMO department staff currently on payroll.
I have a second to get it on the floor.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, Councilor Maxwell, seconds it. Okay. Anybody have any comments, concerns?
I do, Mr. Chairperson. I'm in my 38th year of public service, and I've never once received a cash gift from my employer, and especially not from a publicly funded organization such as a municipality. I work for the province, and never once. I have no problem giving our employees $100 gift cards, but I'll give it out of my own pocket as opposed to the pocket of the ratepayers.
You guys have anything? You're the mover. I mean, I've got a comment after, but
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, every year the province gives us something, so I don't know which province you're working for.
I have never once.
Really?
In 38 years.
They do every year. I don't know what to say.
I'm gonna
I do
make
every
my
year.
comment. I'm not gonna support it. The reason being, a counselor, not gonna mention the name, he took it upon himself, text the group of us, if we're all willing to, on our dime, to put something in to purchase something for the employees. My understanding is we all agree to it. I think that's a good gesture that it's coming out of our own pocket, so therefore I'm not gonna support, like Councilor Ross says, a publicly funded $100 gift card equates to $1,200. So at the end of the day, I'm not gonna support it.
But again, I have no problem
Yeah.
out of my own pocket.
Yeah. And what's happening?
Yeah, and I don't want, yeah, what we passed around is fine.
What, for the audience, what Councilor Ross is saying, we are putting some money into a fund there, or out of our own pockets to buy the employees a Christmas gift, so. No. So nobody else has anything, I'll call for the question for that resolution. All in favor? Council Maxwell? Against?
Sorry.
I'm against.
Yeah.
Stop. What are you?
I'm for.
For it?
For.
It's tied,
So
2-2. It's a defeated motion. Yeah, it's defeated. Okay, grants.
Ooh. Oh, yeah, we forgot.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Eleven point 11. What's that?
There's not all value.
There's another one?
No, there's no value. Is it glitch? Or do we just?
Yeah.
That's where you fill in what you want.
Oh,
Yeah,
That's
that's what we do. Yeah.
Is that?
On the second sheet, there's 2021 values, so it's time to, the mover can put in there exactly what, on the second part. Yeah. Can I just, somebody got, what did we put in the budget? Like before we start plunking numbers, and normally you want a motion on the floor, but we need to see what we budgeted
$5,000.
for. What?
5,000.
How much?
5,000.
5,000. So we budgeted 5,000 and we're already at almost 10 grand. So we're already -5 in the hole, so puts us in a position. Why don't we do this, folks? We've got another meeting coming up in December. Why don't we all look at it? What's that?
I thought there was a grant committee to sit down and.
Yeah, the grant committee, but we should do it before the end of the year to make a commitment. Because for 5,000 budgeted, we're at almost 10 grand. So I'm gonna make a recommendation, no table it till the next meeting. Yeah, is everybody in favor? Tabling it?
2365.
I just,
What do you mean?
there was a second here.
2365 for grants down here. Year to date.
Oh, yeah, 5,000.
Yeah.
That's what we budgeted and that's what we spent so far.
That's what's on the statement, yeah.
What was that? We're just discussing here.
Yeah. But yeah.
Was it budget 5? Did we budget 5?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did.
So we're already there, so we'd be going against our budget, so we gotta find out where, I mean, the weed spraying came in under, and we gotta look at a few costs and maybe we can transfer. And part of that motion will be to use other funding. Yeah, okay, we'll table it then. Can I have a motion to table it? Yeah, table it, and just so we know we took action. You want,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
11.
Can I have a second?